Every dog alive today, from the tiniest chihuahua trembling in a handbag to the massive mastiff guarding a junkyard, carries in its DNA the ghost of an ancient wolf that made the most extraordinary decision in evolutionary history. It chose us, not once, not by accident, but deliberately, repeatedly, across thousands of years. Wolves walked away from their own kind and into our lives, and in doing so, they didn't just change their own fate. They may be the reason you exist at all. Without dogs, humans might never have survived the Ice Age, never outcompeted the Neanderthals, never built civilizations. This is not the story of how we tamed the wolf. This is the story of how the wolf conquered the world, by becoming something else entirely, and how that transformation created the most successful partnership in the history of life on Earth. 30,000 years ago, Europe was a brutal paradise. Vast herds of reindeer migrated across tundra that stretched from the Atlantic to the Urals. Cave lions, larger than any living today, stalked through valleys where London would one day stand, and through this world moved to remarkable hunters. Homo sapiens had arrived in Europe some 15,000 years earlier, bringing with them something the continent had never seen: sophisticated tools, art, and above all, the ability to plan and coordinate hunts with extraordinary precision. But they were not alone in their intelligence. The grey wolf, Canis lupus, was already an evolutionary masterpiece. Their societies were complex, built on hierarchies and alliances that required sophisticated communication. They hunted in coordinated packs, using strategies that would be familiar to any military tactician. The ambush, the flanking maneuver, the relay chase that could pursue prey for hours until exhaustion made the kill inevitable. These were not mere animals operating on instinct. These were thinking, planning, social beings. And perhaps most remarkably, they were watching us. We know now, from the archaeological record, that wolves had been observing human hunting parties for thousands of years before that first tentative approach. They studied our patterns, learned our behaviors, understood that where humans made kills, opportunity followed. The earliest evidence comes from sites across Europe and Siberia. Wolf bones found in unusual proximity to human settlements, dated to 40,000 years ago. But these were not yet dogs. They were still wolves, maintaining their distance, connected to us only by mutual wariness and respect. Then something extraordinary happened. The exact moment is lost to time, but somewhere between 30 and 15,000 years ago, probably in multiple places independently, certain wolves began to change their relationship with humans. The old theory suggested we captured wolf pups and raised them. But this explanation has fallen apart under scientific scrutiny. Wolf pups, even when raised from birth by humans, grow into wolves. Wild, unpredictable, and ultimately untamable. The truth is far more interesting. It began with the brave ones. Or perhaps we should call them the clever ones. In every wolf population, there exists variation in temperament. Some individuals are more aggressive, others more cautious. But a rare few possessed a quality that would prove revolutionary. They were less fearful of humans than their packmates. These wolves discovered that by tolerating human presence, by venturing closer to our camps than any wolf had dared before, they could access a resource no other wolf could touch: our leftovers. This was not begging. This was a calculated risk that required overcoming millions of years of evolutionary programming. Every instinct screamed at them to flee from these strange, upright apes with their flying spears and controlled fire. But hunger and intelligence won over fear. And in making this choice, these pioneering wolves set in motion one of the most extraordinary evolutionary transformations ever witnessed. The humans, for their part, were equally remarkable in their response. Rather than driving these wolves away or hunting them, they allowed them to remain. Perhaps they recognized a kindred spirit in these creatures. Social hunters like themselves, loyal to their pack, caring for their young with touching devotion. Or perhaps it was purely practical at first. Wolves that lingered near camps would raise alarms when danger approached. They would clean up waste that might otherwise attract less welcome visitors. They were, in essence, a self-maintaining security system. But we must not imagine this was a swift transformation. For thousands of years, these were still wolves, living on the periphery of human society. The archaeological site of P in the Czech Republic, dated to 27,000 years ago, tells us something fascinating. Here, archaeologists discovered the remains of 3 canids, with shorter snouts and wider skulls than typical wolves. Anatomical changes that suggest the beginning of domestication. But these were not yet dogs, as we know them. They were something in between, caught in the act of becoming. The real breakthrough in our understanding came from a grave in Bonoba Castle, Germany, dated to 14,000 years ago. Here, buried alongside a man and woman, lay the remains of a dog, not a wolf. Not something in between, but unmistakably a dog. And the manner of its burial tells us everything. This animal was not food. It was not a tool carelessly discarded. It was buried with the same care, the same ritual significance, as the humans beside it. Dental analysis revealed something even more remarkable. This dog had suffered from canine distemper weeks before its death, a disease that would have left it unable to work, unable to contribute anything practical to its human companions. Yet they nursed it through illness. They cared for it when it could offer nothing in return but companionship. 14,000 years ago, the emotional bond between human and dog was already so profound that we would tend to them in sickness and mourn them in death. This transformation from wolf to dog represents one of the most dramatic evolutionary changes ever documented, within a remarkably short span of time. Perhaps as little as 1,000 generations, wolves underwent physical and behavioral modifications that would normally take millions of years of natural evolution. Their skulls shortened and broadened, their teeth became smaller. Their ears, in many cases, began to flop rather than stand erect. Most remarkably, they developed the ability to read human facial expressions and body language with an accuracy that surpasses even our closest primate relatives. The Russian scientist Dmitry Belyaev demonstrated how this might have happened through his famous fox experiments begun in 1959. By selecting only the tamest, least fearful foxes for breeding, he achieved something remarkable. Within just 6 generations, the foxes began to change. Their ears drooped, their tails curled. They developed piebald coats with white patches. They even began to bark, something wild foxes rarely do. Without selecting for any physical traits, only temperament, Belyaev had recreated the domestication syndrome. The implications were revolutionary. All those physical changes we see in dogs, the floppy ears, the wagging tails, the varied coat colors, were not separately selected by our ancestors. They came as a package deal with tameness, linked through the complex interplay of genetics and development. But dogs went further than Belyaev's foxes ever could. They didn't just become tame. They became attuned to us in ways that no other species has achieved. Dogs are born with an innate ability to understand human pointing, something wolves cannot do, something even chimpanzees struggle with despite their closer evolutionary relationship to us. When a dog looks into your eyes, its brain releases oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers to their infants. Remarkably, your brain does the same. We have become neurologically attuned to each other, our brain chemistry intertwined through thousands of years of coevolution. As the last ice age waned and the great glaciers retreated, dogs had already spread with humans across the globe. They crossed the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas at least 15,000 years ago. They traveled by boat to Australia. They adapted to deserts and rainforests, to mountains and islands. Wherever humans went, dogs followed. Or perhaps it's more accurate to say, wherever dogs went, humans succeeded in following. Consider the advantage dogs provided to our ancestors. A dog's nose contains up to 300 million olfactory receptors, compared to our mere 6 million. They can hear sounds at frequencies up to 65,000 Hz, far beyond our upper limit of 20,000. Their night vision surpasses ours significantly. In essence, dogs became our enhanced senses, detecting danger and opportunity long before we could perceive them ourselves. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, who still hunt with dogs, show they catch 30% more prey than those hunting without canine assistance. In the harsh world of prehistoric Earth, that advantage could mean the difference between survival and starvation. But the relationship went deeper than mere utility. Dogs became our companions in a psychological sense that no other domestic animal has matched. Sheep, cattle, pigs, all were domesticated for food or labor. Cats domesticated themselves for their own convenience, maintaining their independence even today. But dogs chose a different path. They became our partners, our friends, our emotional supports. They evolved not just to live alongside us, but to love us. The archaeological record reveals how quickly this bond deepened. By 10,000 years ago, dogs were being buried with elaborate grave goods, ivory necklaces, antler decorations, carefully arranged stones. In ancient Mesopotamia, 7,000 years ago, we find clay tablets describing the proper care of dogs, including what we would recognize today as veterinary advice. The ancient Egyptians mummified their dogs and mourned them with the same rituals used for human family members. When a beloved dog died in ancient Egypt, the entire household would shave their eyebrows in mourning, a gesture of grief reserved for only the closest family members. As human societies grew more complex, so did our relationships with dogs. No longer just hunting companions, they became specialized workers. By 8,000 years ago, we see evidence of dogs adapted for specific tasks. Some were bred larger and stronger for protection and war. Others were kept small and swift for hunting in dense forests. The bones tell the story. Diversity in size and shape that speaks to deliberate, thoughtful breeding for purpose. The Neolithic Revolution, when humans transitioned from hunting and gathering to agriculture, marked another crucial chapter in the dog-human story. As we settled into permanent villages and began cultivating crops and livestock, dogs found new roles. They became guardians of our flocks, protecting sheep and goats from the very wolves they had descended from. The irony is profound. In choosing to live with us, dogs had switched sides in an ancient conflict, now standing against their wild cousins to protect human interests. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was yet to come. Somewhere in this journey from wolf to working dog, something unprecedented in the animal kingdom occurred. Dogs developed the capacity for what we can only call love. Not mere attachment. Not simple pack bonding, but something approaching the complex emotional connection we associate with human relationships. Modern neuroscience has revealed that dogs' brains respond to their human companions in patterns remarkably similar to how human brains respond to loved ones. The caudate nucleus, a brain region associated with positive emotions, lights up in MRI scans when dogs smell their human scent, even when that human is not present. This neurological bond works both ways. Humans who interact with dogs show decreased levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and increased levels of oxytocin. The simple act of petting a dog can lower blood pressure and reduce anxiety. We have, in essence, co-evolved to be therapeutic to each other. It's a symbiosis, not of survival, but of emotional well-being. The spread of dogs across cultures reveals how universal this bond became. In ancient China, the Pekingese were bred as sleeve dogs, carried in the flowing robes of emperors as living hand-warmers and companions. The Aztecs believed dogs guided souls to the underworld, and would sacrifice them to accompany the deceased on their journey. The Aboriginal Australians, isolated for 50,000 years, independently developed the same sleeping arrangement known across the world, using dogs as living blankets against the cold night, giving us the phrase, three-dog night, for particularly frigid temperatures. Yet not all human societies embraced dogs equally. Some cultures, particularly those with religious taboos against dogs, maintained them purely as working animals. But even in these societies, the archaeological and historical record often reveals a more complex relationship. Private letters from ancient Persia describe beloved hunting dogs with deep affection. Islamic scholars debated for centuries whether the saluki, a hunting dog, was exempt from religious prohibitions due to its noble nature and utility. By the time of the Roman Empire, 2,000 years ago, the dog's place in human society had become remarkably modern. Romans had breeds we would recognize today: massive war dogs similar to mastiffs, swift sighthounds like greyhounds, and small companion dogs that would not look out of place in a modern apartment. They had dog trainers, dog doctors, and even dog beauticians. Wealthy Romans commissioned portraits of their dogs and wrote epitaphs for their graves that could have been written yesterday. One, carved in stone 2,000 years ago, reads, "I am in tears, while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced when bringing you home in my own hands 15 years ago." The Romans understood something that science would take to millennia to prove: that dogs were not just tamed wolves, but something entirely new. They called them canis familiares, the familiar dog, distinguishing them from their wild ancestors. This taxonomic separation would be debated for centuries, with some scientists arguing dogs were merely a subspecies of wolf. But genetic analysis has vindicated the Romans' intuition. While dogs and wolves share a common ancestor, dogs have undergone such profound genetic changes that many scientists now consider them a separate species entirely. The genetic revolution of the past 2 decades has revealed the stunning complexity of dog evolution. We now know that dogs were not domesticated once, but possibly multiple times in different locations. Genetic evidence suggests at least 2 separate domestication events, one in Europe and one in East Asia. These separate dog populations later merged and mixed as human trade routes connected distant civilizations. The dogs we see today are the descendants of this ancient genetic melting pot. But genetics has revealed something even more remarkable. Dogs have evolved specific genes that allow them to digest starch, an adaptation wolves lack. This seemingly minor change tells a profound story. As humans transitioned to agriculture and began eating more grains, we shared our new diet with our dogs. They evolved alongside our changing lifestyle, their genetics modified to match our new way of life. We didn't just domesticate dogs, we co-evolved with them. The Middle Ages saw the relationship between humans and dogs reach new heights of specialization. Medieval hunters developed breeds so specifically adapted to their quarry that they could distinguish between the scent of different deer species. Monastery dogs were trained to turn roasting spits in kitchens, running in wheels like living motors. In the Alps, monks bred the ancestors of Saint Bernards to rescue travelers lost in snowstorms. Dogs so dedicated to their task that they would venture out alone in blizzards, searching for humans in need. The variety of roles dogs filled in medieval society was staggering. They herded sheep in Scotland, pulled carts in Belgium, hunted truffles in France, and guarded palaces in Tibet. Each region developed dogs suited to their specific needs, creating the incredible diversity we see today. From the tiny Chihuahua bred by the Toltecs of Mexico, to the massive Tibetan Mastiff, guardian of Himalayan monasteries, dogs adapted to every conceivable human need. But it was during the Victorian era that our relationship with dogs underwent its most dramatic transformation. No longer primarily workers, dogs became companions, family members, and status symbols. The Victorians didn't just breed dogs for function, they bred them for form, for beauty, for the pure aesthetic pleasure of creating living art. Dog shows began. Breed standards were established, and the purebred dog, as we know it today, was born. This Victorian obsession with breeding had profound consequences. In seeking to create the perfect example of each breed, breeders inadvertently began narrowing genetic diversity. The wolf ancestors of dogs had robust genomes, shaped by natural selection for survival, but human selection for specific traits. Shorter legs, flatter faces, longer ears, began to create genetic bottlenecks. Some breeds developed from just a handful of individuals, concentrating both desirable traits and hidden genetic problems. The 20th century saw an explosion in our scientific understanding of dogs. We discovered that dogs could detect cancer by smell, often identifying tumors before any medical test could find them. We learned that dogs could predict epileptic seizures, detect dangerous drops in blood sugar, and even identify the early stages of Parkinson's disease. The canine nose, we realized, was not just remarkably sensitive, it was a diagnostic tool of incredible sophistication. But perhaps the most profound discoveries came from studying dog cognition. Dogs, we learned, understand human communication in ways that seem almost telepathic. They can learn the names of hundreds of objects, understand categories and concepts, and even demonstrate what appears to be a rudimentary theory of mind. The ability to understand that others have thoughts and knowledge different from their own. The border collie chaser, studied by psychologist John Pilley, learned the names of over 1,000 toys and could categorize them by function and shape, demonstrating cognitive abilities once thought unique to humans and great apes. Modern neuroscience has revealed the true depth of the dog-human bond. When dogs and their humans gaze into each other's eyes, both species experience a surge of oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mothers to their infants. This is unique in the animal kingdom. No other interspecies relationship triggers this fundamental bonding mechanism. We have, quite literally, evolved to love each other. Studies using functional MRI scanning have shown that dogs process human faces in a specialized region of their brains. Just as humans have a specific area for recognizing faces, dogs can read human emotions from our expressions alone, distinguishing between happy and angry faces, even in photographs of strangers. They understand our pointing gestures better than our closest primate relatives. They even show a left gaze bias when looking at human faces, focusing on the right side of our faces, which expresses emotion more intensely. The same bias humans show when reading each other's expressions. The implications are profound. Dogs haven't just adapted to living with humans. They've evolved specialized cognitive abilities specifically for communicating with us. They've developed what researchers call human-like social skills, abilities that wolves don't possess, that even chimpanzees struggle with, but that come naturally to every puppy. A 6-week cold puppy, with no training whatsoever, will follow human pointing to find hidden food. A wolf, even one raised by humans from birth, cannot do this. This cognitive revolution in dogs happened with stunning speed in evolutionary terms. The genetic changes that separate dogs from wolves, perhaps as little as 1% of their genome, have produced behavioral and cognitive differences that would normally take millions of years to evolve. It's as if the pressure of living with humans accelerated their evolution, compressing eons of change into mere millennia. Today, there are an estimated 900 million dogs living on Earth, making them one of the most successful species on the planet. They live on every continent except Antarctica, in every human culture, filling roles our ancestors could never have imagined. Guide dogs navigate busy city streets with blind companions. Service dogs detect seizures, anxiety attacks, and diabetic emergencies. Therapy dogs comfort the sick and dying in hospitals and hospices. Search and rescue dogs find survivors in collapsed buildings and avalanches. Military dogs parachute into combat zones. Police dogs track criminals and detect explosives. And, in millions of homes around the world, dogs do perhaps their most important job of all. They're simply there, offering unconditional love and companionship to humans who need them. The modern dog is a testament to the power of coevolution. They are no longer wolves, haven't been for thousands of years. They are something new, something that exists nowhere in nature except by our side. We created them, shaped them, molded them to our needs and desires, but in doing so, they changed us too. They made us more successful hunters, more secure in our settlements, more capable of surviving in hostile environments. They may even have made us more human. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that dogs may have given Homo sapiens the edge over Neanderthals. Neanderthals, despite their larger brains and greater physical strength, never domesticated dogs. Some researchers argue that the partnership with dogs gave our ancestors a crucial advantage: enhanced hunting success, early warning of danger, and even warmth during Ice Age winters. The sites where we find the earliest dog remains are also sites where Homo sapiens were expanding into Neanderthal territory. It's possible that dogs did just accompany us on our journey to global dominance. They helped make it possible. But the story of dogs is not without its darker chapters. Our obsession with creating the perfect breed has led to genetic problems that cause suffering for millions of dogs. Bulldogs that can barely breathe, German shepherds with crippling hip dysplasia, too small for their brains. These are the unintended consequences of our aesthetic preferences overriding health considerations. We've created dogs that cannot give birth naturally. In our desire to shape them to our wishes, we've sometimes forgotten our responsibility to their well-being. The 21st century has brought new challenges and opportunities to the dog-human relationship. Genetic testing now allows us to identify and potentially eliminate hereditary diseases. Cloning technology has been used to recreate beloved pets, raising profound ethical questions about identity and the nature of the individual. Some researchers are even attempting to reverse-engineer dogs back toward their wolf ancestors, trying to understand exactly which genetic changes created the dog. Meanwhile, our understanding of dog cognition continues to expand. We've discovered that dogs have a sense of fairness, becoming upset when they see another dog rewarded for the same behavior they performed without reward. They show evidence of episodic memory, remembering specific events from their past. They even appear to have a rudimentary understanding of human language. Not just responding to tone, but actually processing words and their meanings in different hemispheres of their brains, just as humans do. The latest research suggests dogs may understand us even better than we imagined. They can detect our emotional states through smell alone, distinguishing between the scent of a happy human and a frightened one. They modify their behavior based on whether we're watching them, showing more guilty behaviors when caught misbehaving if their human is present. They even seem to understand human social hierarchies, responding differently to people based on how they've seen other humans treat them. As we stand at the threshold of new technologies, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space colonization, dogs remain by our side, as they have for thousands of years. When humans finally establish colonies on Mars, it's almost certain that dogs will be among the first Earth species to accompany us. They've followed us from cave to skyscraper, from the Arctic to the equator. Why not from Earth to the stars? The bond between humans and dogs represents something unique in the natural world. Two species, so intertwined that neither would be quite the same without the other. We are, in a very real sense, part of each other's extended phenotype. Dogs have evolved to need us, but we have also evolved to need them. Studies show that people with dogs live longer, have lower rates of heart disease, and recover more quickly from illness. Children raised with dogs show increased empathy and social skills. Elderly people with dogs maintain more active lifestyles and report less loneliness. In a world where humans are increasingly isolated from nature, dogs remain our most tangible link to the animal kingdom. They remind us that we are not separate from nature but part of it. They teach us about loyalty, about living in the moment, about unconditional love. They show us that communication doesn't require words, that understanding can transcend species boundaries, that consciousness and emotion exist in forms we're only beginning to understand. The story of dogs is far from over. As we continue to evolve culturally and technologically, dogs evolve alongside us. Urban dogs are developing different behaviors from their rural cousins. Dogs in different countries show cultural variations in their interactions with humans. Some researchers even suggest we're witnessing the early stages of new breed development, as mixed breeds adapted to modern city life begin to show consistent traits. Looking back across the 30,000 years since wolves first approached our fires, the transformation is breathtaking. From wild predator to beloved family member, from competitor to companion, from wolf to dog, it is one of the most successful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. We gave them food and shelter. They gave us their loyalty, their love, and their remarkable abilities. Together, we conquered the world. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this ancient partnership is not what dogs became, but what they revealed about us. In choosing to share our lives with another species, in developing the empathy and understanding necessary to communicate across the species barrier, we demonstrated capacities for connection and care that define the best of humanity. Dogs didn't just become our best friends, they helped us become more fully human. As we face an uncertain future, climate change, technological disruption, social upheaval, dogs remain a constant. They don't care about our politics, our wealth, or our status. They care only that we are their humans, and they are our dogs. In a world that often seems to make less sense with each passing day, the simple clarity of a dog's love remains one of life's most reliable truths. The next time you look into a dog's eyes, Remember that you're gazing across 30,000 years of shared history. In that look is the echo of ancient campfires, of hunts across frozen tundra, of countless generations of humans and dogs living, working, and dying together. It is a bond forged in the Ice Age and refined across millennia, a testament to the power of trust between species. This is the story of dogs, not just the story of an animal we domesticated, but the story of a species that chose to throw their lot in with ours, that evolved to understand us, to love us, to need us as much as we need them. It is a story that began with wolves at the edge of firelight, and continues today in living rooms and parks around the world. And it is a story that will continue as long as humans and dogs share this planet together. In the end, the transformation from wolf to dog may be the greatest example we have of the power of cooperation over competition, of how two species, by choosing partnership over conflict, both became more than they ever could have been alone. The wolf became the dog, and gained security, comfort, and love. Humans gained a companion, protector, and friend. But most importantly, both species gained something invaluable. Proof that the barriers between species are not insurmountable, that understanding and affection can cross any boundary, and that sometimes the most profound relationships are the ones we never saw coming. 30,000 years ago, a wolf approached a campfire. Today, a dog sleeps at your feet. In between lies one of the greatest love stories ever told. A story written not in words, but in wagging tails and gentle eyes, in shared hunts and quiet companionship, in the countless small moments that make up a life lived together. It is the story of how wildness became trust, how fear became love, and how two species, against all odds, became family.